We put the human first over the paycheck, and we make sure that we are tuning into what each person needs and really calibrating our approach to their needs.
Welcome, everyone, to the Closing Table Podcast, real accounts from real estate professionals, brought to you by WindowStill. I'm Kat Schooler, and today I'm talking with Julie Reisner. Julie is the managing broker of Next Home One out in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And today we talk about what it means to put humans over houses, how Julie focuses on educating her clients, and the myth that real estate is easy, and how Julie demonstrates her value to her clients. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Julie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to start off by asking you, if you were to start over in real estate today, what would you be doing differently?
That is a really good question. I'm going to say nothing. And I'm going to answer, I think that all of my experiences, because I've been in the business for a long time, and I started off as an assistant to a producing agent, and then I became an agent, and then I worked for a couple different brokerages, and now I am a broker, and I have my own office with agents. It all brought me here. And if I didn't go through all of that, and if I had changed anything along the way, I don't think I'd be who I am today. So I don't know if I would change anything. I mean, would I like to make more money? Sure. Would I like to change little things here or there? Sure, maybe. But I've had a really good career, so I don't think I would change anything.
I love that. I love when people say that. It's kind of always a surprise, right? Because it's so easy to be like, "Oh, hindsight's 2020," and
Right,
I'm sure even the industry has changed since everybody started, unless you just started.
right,
It's
right.
constantly evolving.
Changes
So,
every day.
yeah, it's a classic case of like you don't know what you don't know when you
Right,
started.
right.
Um, so it's kind of fun to hear that answer.
Yes, and I learned from some really great people along the way. And if I had not taken that path, I would not have learned from them. And I've met some really amazing people and I've had some really great opportunity. And so I guess that's maybe why I wouldn't change anything, because I just wouldn't have had those experiences. And they've kind of formed me into what I am today. And so kind of the same going forward. I think that whatever path it takes me on and whatever knowledge I gain, then it'll just continue to shape me and mold me and make me the best person I can be.
That's a wonderful perspective to have. You have a great kind of outlook, when you look on your website, one of the things that really stuck out to me is that right up front you say, we put humans over houses.
hmm
So, I'd love to talk about that and what that means to you.
Sure. So that is one of our big taglines. So humans over houses to us means there are a lot of agents in the market, and there are a lot of agents that it's very obvious that they're working for a paycheck. And yes, we are also working for a paycheck. We can't work for free, right? However, we do believe that every human deserves a house. We don't know what that looks like. It could be renting, it could be home ownership, it could be generational wealth that they're building, it could be maybe portfolio or whatever. And so our goal is always to really tap into what that specific human needs and really calibrating our approach to their needs. And so putting the human first over the paycheck. And sometimes it becomes a really hard conversation, because that hard conversation could be no, it's not the right market for you, or no, it's not good right now, or no, this isn't the house for you because X, Y, or Z experience tells us it's going to be too costly for you, or working with your lender to make sure that you're getting the best pricing, the best terms, the best conditions, or finding the down payment assistance programs, or finding lenders that really help and insulate you with the best programs that would benefit you. So really, it's looking at the totality of the human and making sure that we have the best team for them as they're moving forward to home ownership, whether it's now or a year from now. That's what human over house is.
That's a wonderful approach. So, when you are kind of advocating for your clients in this way, and maybe the answer is no to something,
Hmm.
how do you have that conversation? Or is I would imagine for some it might be shocking at first. So, how do you kind of shepherd them through that and let them know that you're trying to help them make the best financial decision for them?
Sure. And a lot of that comes through education, right? First and foremost, we are educators. We are educators of the market. We're educators of home ownership. We're educators of the financial portion of that. Not just what it's going to look like now to the closing table, but what it's going to look like beyond that. And so, what I like to do and what I help my agents to do is to really walk through with our clients, hey, I know you can afford, and I'll just use round numbers. I know on paper you can afford $300,000. However, in 6 months from now, I don't want you to come to me and say, well, yes, I can afford that, but now I can only eat ramen noodles. I can't afford to feed my dog. I'm struggling for my car payment. Like everything is so skinny. I'm house poor. So, what we do through education on the front end is work with the lender to say, yeah, maybe on paper they can afford that, debt to income and all of that. But what is their lifestyle? What else do they like to do? Do they like to take trips? Do they like to go out with friends? Do they like to host a party every weekend? Like, what do they like to do? And how is home ownership going to impact their lifestyle? Because that also has to be taken into consideration. If we just take numbers on a paper, that's not the totality of the person. And so through education, we can then say, all right, well, you've been living in an apartment for 10 years. So do you know that you have to buy a snowblower and a lawnmower? And what is this expense going to be? And a water bill or a propane bill or those things. And how is that going to look 6 months from now? Because sometimes, yeah, they can afford it on paper, but the true litmus test is can they comfortably afford their lifestyle and afford the house? Because if those two things don't match up, that's the shepherding, that's the education, and that's the not now. Perhaps we need to get a little more money in the coffers so it's more comfortable. Or perhaps instead of looking at the $300,000 house, we're going to look at the $250,000 house or the $225,000 house. It might not be your forever home, but it's a really good right now home to get you comfortable with the recalibration of your finances. And then in 2, 3, 4 years from now, we can then go find your dream home when you're comfortable with all the finances and the additional expenses homeownership comes with.
Totally. There's a lot of phantom cost to home ownership. And I think it's
Yes.
amazing that you walk through that with your clients because I think that number can grow in a way that is surprising to people.
Oh, yes. And they don't realize they walk into a house. Maybe they've been living in a one bedroom, one bathroom, tiny little apartment. And now if they're moving to a three bedroom, two bathroom, bigger place, they're going to need furniture or they're going to want, I should say. Maybe not need, but they're going to want furniture. They're going to need lawn service or need a lawnmower. There are things that they're going to need. And it's expensive. It's very expensive to be in home ownership. And so our job through education is to make sure that they understand that because loans, by definition, will only look at debt to income. And that
Mm.
on paper will run them quite high. A good group and team of people working for them, which is also what we do, is we partner with a good lender, we partner with a good title company, we partner with great contractors, we partner and insulate them so that way they understand that we're not here to spend all your money, we're here to spend your money the right way. and those phantom costs can be reduced, but we have to be aware of them.
So when you're talking with clients initially, it sounds like you're going all over all of this. Is
Hmm.
in talking about kind of these additional costs and getting into the nitty gritty of what they can actually afford versus, what they might be approved for, do you give them a worksheet? Is it like a conversation? Or do you just encourage them to kind of run their like monthly finances? Like, how do you exactly go about that with your clients?
Sure. So, one of the ways that I do it is I first start off with, okay, have you talked to a lender? Because that is literally before they even talk to me, that's the first conversation they have. And the reason for that is a lot of times people misunderstand that even though they can afford X amount of dollars, it doesn't mean that they're mortgage ready, right? And so we have to understand that we can even get them a mortgage before we can even talk about home ownership. So the first conversation that they have is talk to a lender. Let's see if you're mortgage ready now. And if so, at to what price? And then once they talk to a lender and we get them mortgage ready and we know what price they're at, now let's talk about true expenses. And most of the time, I should say, people are renting, so they kind of understand what their budgets are or what their monthly expenses are. But I help them to factor in through a worksheet what are the additional expenses that they're going to have with home ownership. So while they understand, oh, I can afford $1,700, yes, but here's a worksheet that is all those other costs that you may or may not have right now because in your rent, you don't pay heating, you don't pay snowplow, you don't pay grass, you don't pay those things. So what does that look like? Now we have an electric bill. Now we have heating costs. Now we have all these other costs. So with the worksheet plus that, say $1,700, we're soon adding up to, oh gosh, this is now $2,300 a month. I can't afford that. There's no way. Right. And it quickly
Mm-hmm.
gets out of hand. So we start with the base of what they think they can afford, add in with a worksheet all those other expenses, and then see where they are comfort wise. And then back off, right? Back off the top dollar amount for the rent or the mortgage. And then still, the auxiliary costs are probably going to be about the same. So if we take those auxiliary costs and know what they are, back off of the mortgage costs, then we can come up to the real cost of what they can afford.
That's awesome. You're out in Kalamazoo, right?
Yes.
Kalamazoo, Michigan, KZoo.
Hmm.
I love
Yep.
it. I'd love for you to talk about your area, maybe for people who haven't been there. Like, what do you love about Kalamazoo?
So I have lived, worked, and worshiped in Kalamazoo or the greater Kalamazoo my whole life. So I love it here. I love the diversity that we have here in Kalamazoo. We are 40 minutes from the lake, Lake Michigan. And so I spent a lot of time at the lake growing up. We have beautiful lakes, inset lakes here right in town, which is lovely. Um, so we just have a lot of things to do here. There's a lot of art, there's a lot of farmers market, there is great educational programs. We've got a great university both in Western and also K College. And our schools, we have the Kalamazoo Promise, and we've got really great neighborhoods too. It's a good size community, but still feels real homey. And that's what I love about our area. Plus, I mean, you jump on the highway, we're 2 hours to Chicago, 2 hours to Detroit, we're 40 minutes to Grand Rapids, 40 minutes to the lake shore. We're kind of close to everything. Plus, I like that we can just say, we're here. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Everybody in Michigan says, where are you? Oh, yeah, we're here. And so we just show them on our hand where we are. But there's so much to do here in town that it just makes it really nice to small town feel, but yet have the opportunity to just go less than an hour and you can be in a bigger town such as Grand Rapids or, the Lakeshore too, which is lovely.
Yeah, it's a great city. I've been a couple of times. I considered going
Mhm.
to college there. Ended up
Mhm.
making a different choice, but it's a great
Mhm.
area. For your clients that you've helped, buy and sell homes, do you have
Mhm.
any memorable stories that stick out to you?
Oh boy. I think that they're all memorable in that I really try to focus on the person and their experience. Some of my favorite people to work with are first time homebuyers. I work with them a lot because I'm a I'm middle generation. So I have a lot of my friends are kind of empty nesters, so they're right sizing. And then their parents are downsizing, and then their kids are first time home buyers. So I get a lot of different generations that I work with, but I do love working with first time home buyers because that educational piece really is something that I get to focus on. Um, they're new to the market, their eyes are wide open. They're so open to advice and listening. And, I kind of get to mother hen them a little bit, which is fun. And they're excited for homeownership. One of my most memorable first time home buyers was a client. He bought his first house. We are on house number two already, but he bought his first house when he was 20 years old and turned that house. He lived in it for about a year, and then he turned that into an investment, moved back into his parents' house, kept that house as an investment, and then he decided, I don't want to live with my parents anymore, which I understand. You're now 21, 22. Who really wants to live with their parents? And so he bought another house. So now he was a homeowner of two houses. And then we recently sold the first house because it was in an area that was really far and it didn't coordinate with his work schedule anymore. And it just became, he didn't want to be a landlord anymore. But he was able to, between purchase and sale, we earned him about $80,000 just by holding on to that asset for a period of time. And that was at 20, 21, 22. That's a huge amount of money. And just to be able to see him go through that and make those smart decisions as a young human was rewarding. And I still talk to him. He's one of my biggest referral sources. All of his friends have bought. He refers me all the time. He's still in this great little house where he's done just a ton of improvements to. I still see him. I talk to him all the time. And so I would say that that's just one example of a very rewarding story is seeing him walk through, taking a chance on homeownership, but then really it turning into a great way to make income for him. And now he basically owns house number two almost outright because of this great investment he took a risk on when he was 20 years old.
Gosh, I bet you other 20-year-olds are out there thinking like, how do I do this? I wish I
Right.
had.
Right. And it's, for that, it's really, again, it's partnering with the right people. We got him down payment assistance. We were able to get him a low cost loan. We were able to find him a house that wasn't perfect for him. Right? It did not check every box, but he was willing to compromise to get into home ownership because it was a good investment. Right. And so he was like, kicking the long goal, right? He was kicking the long ball. He was looking for the marathon, not the sprint. And I think so often now people are looking for that instant gratification. They're looking for that short term gain. They're not looking for the long term. And really, this is a marathon. Real estate, regardless of what you're doing, it is a marathon game. And if you're not in it for that, you can lose your shorts really quick. And so you really have to have a good group of people and the education surrounding you to make sure that you know if you are not in this for a long term, you're going to lose money. But if you can stay in this for 2 or 3 years, chances are, just by the nature of real estate alone, you're going to make money or break even, which is really what our goal is.
That's awesome. So, do you think the disconnect is education, or do you think, like, a lot of people maybe just don't like change, when they're thinking of, like, I'm going to stick it out for my forever home because I don't want to do this again, or I don't think this is worth doing again. You see where I'm going?
I do. And I think that, so there's a lot of sensationalized news. And
Mhm.
I think that that is part of what is scaring people off of home ownership. I think we were in a market that burnt people out because we had interest rates of, I was selling at sub 2% on an interest rate, which is unheard of. Never had that in my career. Probably won't again. Now we're coming down, but roughly we're 5 to 6% on an interest rate, which if you take an interest rate and double it, it means you can just afford a lot less house, right? And so the people who were in the 2% got really burnt out because it was highly competitive and they were having to give a lot away. They were having to um, not negotiate repairs. They were having to maybe not have inspections. They were having to put in appraisal gap coverage and spend all their cash. And now they're just having to spend all their cash differently because of they've got these high interest rates and these high cost loans. And so I think that the problem is they're looking at it going, well, it was 2% at one time, so I'm just going to wait it out and maybe it'll come down again. When the truth is that if you can get into a house and maybe it isn't your forever home, it never usually is, right? Unless you're more my age. If you can get into a house, you're paying yourself rather than somebody else's mortgage. And that's always a better bet, right? Paying yourself back. And if you can just stay in it for 2 or 3 years, then you're at least breaking even versus the 2 or 3 years of paying somebody else's mortgage, i.e., rent, right? And you have nothing to show for it. So even if it's a wash at the end of the 2 or 3 years and you have to move again and do it again, you're not at a $20,000 loss. You're just at a neutral. And I would take a neutral all day long over a loss. And I think that it is part of what people don't explain. I also think that I used to go into schools and teach this. And I haven't been invited into schools to teach this for a long time. I think that we don't educate on some of the fundamentals, right? Schools think that the household is going to teach it, and the household thinks the school is going to teach it. And that is a breakdown because then nobody teaches it. And so even my own kids, right? My own kids know this because they hear the conversations in my own house because I'm educating people constantly about home ownership. My daughter purchased a condo earlier this year in January. She's 25 and she purchased her first condo. And it was really interesting because she said that she wasn't sure she wanted to purchase. And I'm all for that, right? Like, purchase or don't, it does not matter to me. You have to do what's right for you. And sometimes purchasing isn't the right thing to do, as we talked about earlier. That's a hard conversation of maybe not now. And so for her, it was, do I purchase or not? And I said, do what you want. She went to go rent and she needed a cosigner to rent. She did not need a cosigner to buy. Now, if you think about that, that really shows how predatory renting is and not how purchasing is. And so she came to her dad and I and said, well, if I rent, I need a cosigner, but if I buy, I don't. I said, well, we will cosign for you to purchase all day long, but we will never cosign for you to rent because it's just not a smart financial move, right? And so she wound up buying. We got her into a low down payment. So she got down payment money. She wound up buying the cutest little 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom condo. Out of pocket, it cost her $1,000
Oh, wow.
to purchase a condo. And I think people don't understand how low you can get into something. Is it her dream place? No. Would she rather be in maybe a cute little house or something else? Yes. But is it working for her right now? Absolutely. Because she works at a zoo. She's very busy. She doesn't have time for yard work. She doesn't have time for snow removal. She doesn't have time for any of that. So to her cost to get into home ownership was way low because her rent cost would have been 2.5 times or whatever it is that they charge to get into a rental. And she would have needed a cosigner and she probably would have needed a roommate. So it was like a no-brainer. But nobody explained that to her. And I'm sitting here thinking, how did I miss that by not explaining it to my own child? And I'm in the business. So imagine people not in the business not even knowing how to explain that to their children.
I think it's incredible that you used to go in schools and teach this. And I love the story of your daughter. So thank you so much for sharing. I didn't get this in school. And I mean,
Mm-mm.
when I was still in school, I do remember in third grade, they taught me how to write a check, which is maybe not quite as useful anymore. But,
Right.
um, but I still know how to do it. And I bet you Gen Z
Right.
doesn't. So,
Right, right, right. Well, and it's funny too because when we go to closings and I say, okay, your closing balance statement, right? It's just like debits and credits. It's like a check register. And I get this blank stare and I'm like, hmm. Right, you've never had a check register. Okay, you know how when you look at your online bank statement and you've got the stuff coming out and the stuff going in? That's what this is, right? Like, so over the years, because of my age, and I did grow up with check registers and I did grow up with some of that, I've just had to modify my speech to make sure that I stay relevant to these kids that are growing up without that, right? And
hmm.
so I just have to now say, all right, what is it that you understand so I can modify my language to make sure that you're understanding what's in front of you? Because if you're not understanding what's in front of you, don't sign the paperwork. Like, don't sign the paper. This is a legal binding contract. If you don't understand it, don't sign it. Right. And so, again, part of that educational piece is making sure that they understand what's in front of them. Because a lot of times, even if their parents are involved or their family is involved, chances are they purchased the house 20 years ago and the game has changed since then. We have to make sure that we're advocating for them.
That's kind of a great lead up to my next question, which is
Hmm.
over the course of your career, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned?
Oh boy. The biggest lesson I've learned is that every day is something new. Every day is change. And either stay on the change bus or this is absolutely not a career for you. We have NAR lawsuit settlement coming down, and there's some changes that are affecting some of the language that we use and some of the marketing that we're able to do. That change is coming in August 17th. Into play. And quite honestly, there's still a lot of confusion around that. And there's still language that we're tailoring for that. And we will continue to do it after August 17th. And so it's just very interesting that nothing stays the same. So that's probably the biggest lesson. Just when I think I've reached peak, I'm like, oh, no, pivot. Oh, no, pivot, right? That's also the exciting part of what I do. I love learning. And so I think that that is exciting. It can be also nerve-wracking. Um, but I have a really great group of agents with me along for the ride. I own a brokerage that's a franchise. So I've got great leaders at the top who are pouring into me as a broker. And so that's great because I am continually learning. So I'm a student of this industry just so that way I can be the best that I can be for my people, both my agents and my clients.
That's great. And we might have already hit on this, but I'll ask anyway because maybe you have a different answer. What do you think is one of the biggest myths people believe about real estate?
That it's easy. I think that the myth is that, we just sit back and collect our checks and that our job is super duper easy. I think that's probably the biggest myth. And I think we have perpetuated that myth, if I'm being really transparent
Mm.
with you. I know that early in my career, I took on a lot of the stressors in a transaction to shield my clients from all that was going on, right? Meaning that I may look like just a duck gliding across the water, but my feet are like this under the water, right? And I only let my clients see this because that's what I thought I was doing, serving them well. The issue was it became like it looked easy and it took on the appearance of, wow, that seemed really easy for you to make X amount of dollars or whatever that is, right? What they didn't realize was that the feet were always going, the mind was always going, and that I took on a lot of negotiations they knew nothing about, stress they knew nothing about. I was doing so much behind the scenes, but I was shielding them from that it appeared easy, but man, I was working my tail off behind the scenes. And so I think that that is a misnomer that a lot of us have done in our business. So that's probably the hardest part, right? And so, what I encourage my agents and what I've now started to do is pull back that curtain a little bit. They don't need to know the nitty gritty. They don't need to know the down and dirty. They don't need to know the tears. They don't need to know, that I stay up at night worrying about if the transaction is going to close or how am I going to negotiate this or how is this change going to affect this or they don't need to know how I'm running my business to best serve them. However, they do need to know if this doesn't happen, then this isn't going to happen for them. And so they need to understand that there are a lot of pivots that happen along the way. And I need to allow them in to see those to really kind of show my value, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Yeah. It's all
So
about demonstrating your value.
it is. And I can talk my value all the time, but you're right, Kat. It's that demonstration of the value. And you can only do that within the transaction, right? I can talk about my value all the time, but unless somebody sees it in play, I can talk about, I've been watching the Olympics lately, right? And I could get up
Hmm.
there and I could say, oh, I can run a 4 minute mile. I can't, but let's just pretend I said that, right? But unless I actually show them I can run a 4 minute mile, they're just believing my words, right? I have to prove it to them. And the only way I can prove it to them is actually getting out and running the race and doing the things and showing them, hey, mm, maybe this wasn't the best. Maybe we need to pivot here, or maybe we need to do this. Or I had a client this morning where we're in the midst of negotiating repairs. I've had no less than 8 conversations between myself and the other agent. Well, my client doesn't know I've had these 8 conversations because I don't update them every single time I speak to the agent. So she texted me this morning, how's it going? I haven't heard since, 2 days ago. And I'm like, oh, I need to tell her I'm still working through this, right? Every time she comes to me and says, I haven't heard, I've not done my job because I haven't gone to her. She had to prompt me. So I need to ramp up my communication. And I don't like it when people come to me. I want to be going to them, right? So what I should have done this morning first thing is saying, "Hey, just so you know, we're still working through this, still having conversations about this." So she's not over there worried because I know she's over there worried because no communication equals bad communication to her, right? And so, that's just a lesson. But she doesn't need to know I'm sitting here going, "Come on, let's get through this." She doesn't know I'm pushing back and I'm pushing back and I'm advocating and I'm advocating. She doesn't need to know the nitty gritty of the conversation that I'm having between the agent and myself, but she does need to know that I'm out here advocating for her. I don't want her to know silence. So I think that that's, also a lesson is just pulling back that curtain a little bit and making sure that they're aware that even though there's quiet times, I'm still fiercely advocating for them.
And I think athletics is honestly, it's a great example for so many things, right? Because athletes, they train and train and train to Olympics is a great example to perform for, I don't know, 5 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Whatever sport you're in.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the other thing, to your point of, oh, people might think it seems easy. Well, every transaction you've done up until the most current transaction is preparing you for the current one, for the next one. As you say, it's
Yes.
always changing.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because with some of the changes that are coming in with NAR, I keep talking to my agents about be able to articulate your value. Articulate your value to a seller and articulate your value to a buyer. My value to a seller and my value to a buyer looks very different today than it did when I first got in the business because of all those lessons that I learned along the way, right? And my value now is much higher. And we have new agents coming in to the industry. The barrier to our industry is extremely low. You take a class, you take a test, boom, you're an agent. And on the surface, you hold the same designation as I do as far as agent goes. Not a broker, but as far as an agent goes. So, to the general public, value is the same until you start digging into their chapter 1. You cannot compare it to my chapter 180, right? You can't compare it to the miles I've put in or the transactions I've put in. Now, I'm not saying I'm any better or worse than them or they're any better or worse than me, but there is certain value there for the season and the miles that you have in the transactions that you've done. So the experience that you've gained along the way. So I think that it's definitely an industry that a lot of people will compare what they think are apples to apples, but it's really apples to kumquats. There's not really a comparison. So the general public needs to do a lot of interviewing and they need to ask questions of the people that they want to work with to make sure that they're the best advocate for them in whatever position they are. And that also becomes part of the humans over houses.
What kinds of questions do you think people should be asking their agents when they first meet with them?
I think that one of the biggest things that they need to ask is in a tough situation, how are you going to advocate for me? For example, if I don't have a lot of cash on hand to purchase a home, but I really want to purchase a home, what are my options? Oh, well, that's easy. Let's find you a down payment assistance. Are you a firefighter? Are you a doctor? Are you going to school? Are you a first time home buyer? I mean, I've got people in every single one of those arenas that can help them, right? It's finding out who they know that can help them, right? I like to call it Julieville. And this is, oh, I'll tell you my cat story, but it'll make sense. Um, Julieville is where I am the hub of the wheel, right? And you're on the spoke, and I've got all these people on my spoke of the wheel, and I'm the hub. I'm the information hub, right? Your window still. If I need a photographer, I know exactly who to call. I'm calling you guys, I'm booking you guys all day long, right? It's a no-brainer to me. I'm in the hub. Here's my client. They need a photographer. I'm coming to you guys, right? So I'm not a big cat fan. I know I might get hate mail for that. I am a cat grandma. My daughter has a cat, so I am a cat grandma. But I'm just not a cat fan. I'm more of a dog person. And so one day I'm on social media, and as I said, I've lived, worked, and worshiped in Kalamazoo my whole life, so I know a few people in the area. And I got a message on social media, and somebody said, Julie, you know a few people. We're looking to adopt a cat. Okay, I'm in real estate. Like, I can buy and sell houses all day long. Cats, not my arena. So I'm like, why would this person message me about a cat? And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm in Julieville, right? This person's over here. I know them, from this, whatever way I know them. But this person down here that I went to high school with, yeah, they raise barn cats. So turns out I did know somebody who had cats, and I was able to connect those people. So you become a connector, and that's how you become great at what you do. So what you can do is ask them, who do they know that can help you? Have a conversation with them. What questions do I need to ask you? Well, you need to ask me, who are the people that I know that can help you for your specific situation? Because if I only know how to help first time home buyers, that's great for Bob or Sue, but that's not great for Mary or John who just had their kids get out of their house and now they have to resize. I mean, does it translate? Yes. Can I do it? Yes. But wouldn't you rather have somebody who's got experience in all of that? Probably. That's some of the questions that I would ask is kind of what experience they have. I do want to say though that I don't discount new agents because they're new. I think new agents can be so amazing at what they do because they maybe aren't jaded like agents who have been in the business for a while. Sometimes agents do the same thing over and over again, right or wrong, just because they've done it over and over again. And a lot of times, new agents come in with a fresh set of eyes and a new way of looking at things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never looked at it that way. That's amazing. I love that. So you have to be able to have a lot of people at your table because if you're the one with the the ideas that are the only ones being shared at the table, you're at the wrong table, right? You need to have a lot of ideas at the table. And I think that's what Julieville is all about, or whatever ville you're in, Catville, or whatever ville that you're in. I think that that is really, really important. So those are some of the questions that you can ask when you're interviewing people. Have you worked with first-time home buyers? Have you worked with multi-generational homes? Have you worked with investors? If so, how can you help us find money? How can you help us find angel investors? How can you help us find money to help with down payment? Those types of things.
Oh, that's so great. Julie, are there any challenges you're facing in the current real estate market and how are you working through them?
Biggest challenge right now, I would say, is inventory. We're still suppressed in inventory. We don't have enough right priced homes for the buyers entering the market. A lot of that has to do with the fact that because interest rates are up, buying power is down. And so people are still pricing up here and buying power is here. So there's still a big gap or disparity between those two. And so we don't have a lot of the entry level homes that maybe are more move in ready versus needing some rehab. Even though those might be good investments, a lot of people don't have either the cash capital or the know how to do it. And so they're not wanting to look at those types of houses. Um, we also have a lack of education in that sellers are still pricing for 3 years ago, and buyers are wanting, to buy in this market. And so that helps create that gap of misunderstanding. And so that's probably the two biggest things is pricing and lack of affordable housing. So the best thing to do is to, yeah, shoot your shot if you want to try and go for getting the most that you can for your house, which of course everyone wants to do, but you also have to be very realistic in who is the audience for your house and what we think is the financeable amount for your house. Because in this market at 6% interest, people aren't going to throw money at it for an appraisal gap. They're not going to give their firstborn. They're not going to waive inspections. They're not going to do that crazy stuff like they did when it was like 1 or 2%. It's just not happening. We're not seeing that.
And then, Julie, do you have any, goals you've set for this year? And if so, how are they going?
So, the biggest goal that I set for 2023, 2024 was I opened up this physical brokerage location, which is Next Home One in Kalamazoo. We have offices in Brighton and Fenton and also Kalamazoo. And so our main focus for the Kalamazoo was growth. When we opened this branch in June, it was actually June 22 of 2023. That was our grand opening, and that was also my parents' anniversary. So that's why I know that date and why I intentionally picked that date. Um, it was myself, my assistant, and one other agent. And so we were teeny tiny. And as of yesterday, we just signed on our sixth agent. And so our growth has been incredible in the last year. Um, Actually, our seventh person, I should say. So our growth has been incredible in the last year. So my focus has shifted a little bit more from active selling to growing the brokerage. And while we are locally based in Kalamazoo, we have grown north and west. And so we have agents in the greater Kalamazoo area, up to the Grand Rapids area, and all the way over to the Holland, Zealand, Grand Haven, Lakeshore area, down to South Haven, Lawton, up to Gull Lake. So we've really been able to spread out our geographical area, which is super exciting to me. So that growth has been very rewarding and humbling at the same time because nobody really heard of Next Home when I opened this brokerage. They knew who I was because I've been a staple in our community, but they didn't know what Next Home was. So it's been very humbling, and the people taking a chance on me are so incredibly amazing. And so that's kind of been my reshift and my focus. I'm still actively selling. I am still an agent. I'm still helping people buy and sell to a very high degree. But pouring into my agents is just where my heart is, and collaborating with other brokers and other brokerages and other agents is just something that is near and dear to my heart. So I've opened up a Facebook group called Raising the Bar, which I feel like we need to raise the bar of our industry for everyone, the general public as well as the agents. And so those are my goals, and I feel that they're going well. We could always bring on more agents. So I would always love to see us grow because I think we're a pretty awesome place to be.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. Oh, that's so
Thank
exciting to
you.
hear.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It looks very different than what I thought it was going to be, right? Because anytime you do something like this, you think you have the vision of what it looks like, and it looks different and so much better, which is amazing, right? I thought it was going to be one way, and I thought it was going to look a certain way, and just it doesn't, but it's so much better. And I pinch myself every single day because I just am surrounded by the it's the unbelievable caliber of people that have surrounded me and that I get to surround myself with. It's so rewarding. And it just makes me want to continue to give and give and give and give.
Oh, Julie, that's so lovely to hear. And I
Yeah.
think a wonderful place to end our conversation. Would you like to direct people how they can find you, how they can work
Yeah.
with you, how they can find next home one?
I'm big on social media, and you can find me just under my name, Julie Reisner. And then Next Home One, our URL is super easy. It's nexthome.one, nexthome.one. And my phone number is 269-267-6829. And I'd love to chat with anyone who wants to get into real estate, who wants to buy and sell houses, who wants to become an agent, or who's thinking about a transitional change from their current broker. The beautiful thing about all of the brokerages in the area, I say that they're like churches. There's one for everyone, and it isn't a one size fits all. We all offer something of value to our agents, and that's the beauty of it. And there's growth, right? We all go through growth seasons. Sometimes our growth is here, and sometimes our growth is there, and sometimes we're just in transitional phases. So I just look forward to talking to anyone. I have a sweatshirt that says, warning, may spontaneously talk about real estate. And it's like every single topic under it, I could talk for hours.
Oh, well, wonderful. We'll link all of that in the show notes so people can find you really easily and hopefully they will
Yeah.
reach out and chat with you about real estate.
Thanks so much, Kat. Really appreciate your time and love what you guys are doing over at WindowStill.
Thank you so much, Julie. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Closing Table podcast brought to you by WindowStill. I'm Kat Schooler. Please make sure you are following our podcast on Apple or Spotify. And if you're part of our YouTube audience, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a comment or review. It helps us find more amazing listeners like you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.